Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, or good night, depending on where and when you're listening to this. So, this evening, we're going to be going into the updates and the Nick Reiner case. We're going through Alan Jackson withdrawing from the case and the possible reasons as to why that is. I know it's purely speculation at this point, but I've managed to narrow it down. There's usually three general reasons as to why some attorney withdraws from a case. So we'll be getting into that. But hello, Shays Crafty 3. Glad you could make it. And good evening to you. Yeah, for me, I'm back over in the UK because it was my grandmother's funeral the other day. So my time, it's midnight. So forgive me if I sound a little tired or with less energy than I usually have because it's middle of the night for me. But I picked this time because I know most of my viewers are North Americans. So I want to appeal to you guys and do a time that's better for you rather than me, because it matters more to me accommodating you rather than you accommodating me. And I can soldier on just with it being a little later. I've got some Pepsi here, so hopefully that'll keep me going. So, yeah, let's get into it. So, Alan Jackson, press conference the other day, comes out after a court hearing and says, I'm withdrawing from the case. Nick Reiner is not guilty of murder, which is, he's not debating whether he killed them or not. He's saying that by California state law, he wasn't in control of his mental faculties at the time, so was not guilty of the murder by reason of insanity. But he never gave a reason as to why he was withdrawing from the case, which I think falls under client attorney privilege. I think he can't really talk about that, or if he can, I don't think he wants to talk about it now, because he clearly still believes, obviously, that Nick is mentally incompetent and shouldn't, face criminal charges for it. So he's made clear that that's the case, and that's what he's stated passionately. So it was a big mic drop moment, AJ coming out there and doing that. So there's been a lot of speculation ever since that press conference. So we're going to try and filter in between what is speculation and what could be, filter through all the speculation, frankly, because that's all we've got, and kind of figure out what is plausible and what isn't. So, yeah. And I'd love to hear anyone's theories and chat about, why he may have withdrawn from the case. So, yeah, it's possible that the family may have decided to cut all ties to Nick, including financial. So, AJ may feel, there's no chance of me getting paid from this, and Nick can't have inheritance due to him killing his parents under California law. So, yeah, that's a real possibility. But on the other end of things, a lot of people feel, and I do as well, that AJ is more motivated by high-profile cases than he is actually money. As I think he's got a lot of money already. He's a millionaire already, and he has his own firm. He's very high-profile. So I think at this stage in his career, he's more motivated by high profile than money, because in the Karen Reed case, he allowed Karen to pay him off, in installments. So, like, I don't think he is as motivated by money as most attorneys is, because he's got so much of it. But I think that it does have a role to play in it, because if he's heading his firm and he's giving up his time is money when you're the head of the firm. Hey, Coffee and Skeleton, glad you could make it. But yeah, time is money when you're the head of the firm. So any time that he's away from any other cases, because he's the type of attorney that tends to put his focus into all one case at a time, because he really puts his all behind everything he does. He's the type of lawyer, if you're in trouble, if I'm ever in trouble, and got deep enough pockets behind me, I'll certainly be calling Alan Jackson. But God forbid I'm ever in such a situation where I need such serious defense. Knock on wood, that don't happen. But yeah, that is the money aspect is a real possibility that I'm not going to rule out. But it's around my head that I'm conflicted basically. Of course, he needs some money because it's time. Time is money. Like I said, he's the head of the firm. But on the other end, I think he is more motivated by the high-profile nature of the case. So I think that attracts him more and would compensate for maybe the lack of money in his mind. That the attention alone, the media exposure alone from another high-profile case would actually be more beneficial in the long run financially anyway. Laura Lulu, glad you could join us. Hi. We're just going in with the latest news about AJ withdrawing from Nick Reiner's case. And anyone who's just watching who isn't familiar, Nick Reiner's the son of Rob and Michelle Reiner, who is accused of their double murder. And he has underlying mental health issues and substance abuse issues. So the situation is arguing over competency rather than whether he did it or not. That's not really in question. But yeah, there is, like I say, Romy and Jake weren't at the court. So it seems like they've separated their links to him for the meantime, which is understandable. Maybe in the future, maybe one day they'll speak to him again or visit him in his mental health institute, which is where I hope he ends up, and they can, visit. But that's obviously up to them, and I completely would understand if they'd never want to see him again because it would be too painful. I completely understand that. There's no judgment here for them. They can just, there's no pressure on them to turn up to court. Like I said in my live with Laura from Perplexed True Crime, if I was them, I'd just get away from it all, go off grid, unplug my phone and try and get away from all the media reports because it would just, keep rubbing salt in the wounds, I suppose. And they're fresh wounds, very fresh. And it was a horrific thing that happened. Let's not forget that. The Reiners were very involved in social justice issues, so I would be surprised if the siblings wouldn't follow their parents' legacy, but understand. Yeah, I completely agree. I completely understand. It's so fresh. Maybe I just think if the dust hasn't settled yet, so they're acting exactly how they should for their own sanity. If Romy and Nick were not Romy and Nick, if Romy and Jake were getting so close to Nick now, it would only traumatize them. I think. I'm no psychiatrist, but it doesn't take a Sigmund Freud to figure out that that's probably not a good idea. So I can understand that the family want to just distance themselves from all this. And like I said earlier, he can't, meaning Nick, can't receive his inheritance from his parents because he killed them. Doesn't matter that he was mentally incompetent. He killed them. You know what I mean? And that's going to be withheld because he's accused of it, so he can't access it yet. So it feels like it originally either AJ put his hand up and said, right, I'll do it, or someone in the family was funding him, and then at some point they have decided to cut all ties with Nick. This has been the speculation, and this is what I think as well. I'm leaning towards that more than anything else. And there's a potential conflict of interest as well, because AJ or his firm may have worked for the Reiners or Castle Rock, which is Rob Reiner's production company that he was a partner in and co-owner of. So there's the potential that Jackson's law firm did business with the Reiners before, or that AJ may have been a family friend. He may have been a friend of the Reiners because, they both live in LA. I don't know Jackson's political leanings, you know what I mean? But in my experience, LA, most lawyers are pretty left wing. So maybe Jackson's a Democrat and they both knew each other from Democrat functions, or something like that. Or Jackson did business for Rob in a case, or his firm did business for Rob in some kind of case, or something like that. Because these are the three reasons that I was talking about earlier why an attorney withdraws from a case. It's financial issues, irreconcilable or unreasonable difficulty with the client, or another thing being what we just spoke about, a conflict of interest. So this is all the three possibilities, and financial, like we said, is a possibility, but I feel more the high profile nature for it would, in Jackson's mind, compensate for a lack of money. So I think I'm thinking maybe it's some kind of conflict of interest, because I don't think he wanted off this case at all. I think he knew this is going to be the biggest case of the year, and it's like the first case of the year almost, because of the nature of it. It's celebrity, it's homicide, it's two things that dominate the media: celebrity and true crime merging. So obviously TMZ is going into overdrive because Harvey Levin got his start in working for Court TV, and then got into the whole celebrity news game, and now obviously his two worlds are colliding. And TMZ has been my main source for this stuff. They've got insiders on this stuff, so I've been going to TMZ, and they've actually been doing a really good job covering this case. And I've also been watching a daily dose of Dana Bowling, who has good sources as well. And she, like I've mentioned in my other live, she was an ex talent agent or something like that, or casting agent, I think, in Hollywood. So she knows a lot of insiders. So yeah. Also, AJ wants to be known as an attorney that can get anyone off charges. I don't think Reiner has a chance in heck of getting off scot-free. I agree, but I think the fact that, it could getting him, considered a mental case, and incompetent, which he is, in my opinion. There's no question about it, in my opinion. But obviously that requires the judge to believe that. And I think even with a public defender, like this leads me on to my next point. Like maybe the family who were paying for AJ, or were going to pay for AJ, thought maybe there's no point in paying all this money for Alan Jackson when we could just get a public defender. And Nick's obviously mentally ill. He has the diagnosis of schizophrenia. It's not going to take a masterclass dream team of attorneys to convince a judge that he was mentally incompetent when he did it. I think that may also play into it. Like, why waste the money type of thing. I think that the trial is going to be big on mental health and how the system failed Nick, Rob, and Michelle, probably. If it even gets to trial, you know what I mean? If I'm pretty confident that it won't, that the judge will be convinced that he was that he is incompetent and was incompetent then, and therefore the trial can't go forward. Because, like, there's another reason as to why Jackson may have had to withdraw, and this goes into the category that I mentioned of unreasonable difficulties with Nick. So if Nick doesn't even know that he did what he did, or doesn't even really know he could be on trial and he's been charged with double homicide, how can Jackson mount a reasonable defense in such a scenario? He can't. He needs to work with his clients, but and that may be a tactic of Jackson's to say, look, he's so bad in the head, he's so mentally ill, that, like, I can't even work with him to form a defense, or not a defense, or even an argument of saying he's not competent, he's that far gone. But like I said, that's a bit of a stretch. but these are just all the possibilities that I've noted down. Yes, I don't feel that Jackson, like I've said, is primarily motivated by money. I think it is attention and media spectacle and status. And I think that, honestly, that's what you want as a lawyer. I think he's everything you want and would expect as a lawyer. I'm not knocking him in any way. That's what lawyers are. And that's what good lawyers are. He's a great lawyer. And there's no two ways about it. And he did a great job in the Karen Reid trials. That's true. Nick may not be fit to stand trial. Yeah, I really don't think he is. I think anyone who kills their parents has to be mentally ill. No way someone does that of sound mind, unless it was like self-defense from like abuse or something. But, like in the way he did it, like completely cold-blooded and not in the heat of some act of abuse or a drunken, messed up argument. He went there after the dust had settled, hours after the dust had settled, and murdered them in their sleep with a knife and slit their throats, like up close and personal. Yeah, that guy has to be mentally ill. It's really hard to get your head around. Yeah, it's possible he's not competent at all. Yeah, exactly. He needs to even know that he's in a courtroom, you know what I mean? And schizophrenia is such a heavy mental illness that it completely, your brain chemistry is completely off. People who are schizophrenic, their reality is completely different to the reality that we all see. So we all see and know the situation Nick is in and the severity of it. But the question is, does he even remember what happened? Or does he even know why he's in custody? Does he, like, what does he think is even going on? Is he just saying yes in court because AJ tells him to? It is like, what is happening? They said he had some form of schizophrenia, so sad and tragic. Most that suffer are not valid. Exactly, Shays. That's a very important distinction to make. Like, people have this image that if the only schizophrenics that people really hear about generally are the ones that flip out and kill and are violent, because that's newsworthy. Wherever, like, obviously there's people who were schizophrenics, like, for example, Syd Barrett from Pink Floyd, original member of Pink Floyd, became what is commonly referred to as an acid casualty, took way too much LSD in the 60s and was someone who was already predisposed to contracting illnesses like schizophrenia and psychosis. And then that induced it in him and he became a schizophrenic, but was never violent in his life. And Brian Wilson, another musician from the Beach Boys, was a schizophrenic and was never violent, was the absolute opposite of violent, was a very timid and peaceful man, but with a very damaged and broken mind. So, like that, the idea that every schizophrenic is a violent person is non-accurate. So you're very right in pointing that out, Shays. So, like, there is a lot of stigma around it, especially that I think schizophrenia has the most stigma around it than any other mental illness. It sounds like they took him off a med that was working for him about a month or more before the murders. Yeah, 4 weeks. So yeah, about a month. And that is actually what I was just getting onto. The chat keeps reading my mind, so thank you very much for helping me transition from point to point. But you're right, yeah. He was taking off his meds, like, for no good reason as well. Like, he was having no issues with the meds that were working perfectly for him, and for whatever reason, in this rehab clinic that he was in, they saw fit to change his meds without consulting his ordinary doctor or his family or him. They just did it. And this goes into this facility could very much be liable, held civilly liable by the Reiner family after this. So after all this, there could be civil trials as well for this rehab clinic. And this is a rehab clinic that they were paying like 20 grand for, 25 grand for, that type of money. And they were basically treating Nick and other people in there like guinea pigs, changing the medication around. What kind of, psychopath, so-called curer would do that? Like you're playing Russian roulette with somebody's mind. Someone who's a schizophrenic, that's the worst possible person to mess around with the medication. And look what happened, And it would be interesting to find out if he had history of violence. They said that like Romy and him had a closeness, and then apparently she said that he started to scare her. So whether he started acting violently against them is unknown, but we'll try and find it out, and hopefully we will find out later on. All we do know is that he used to smash the house up, and just because someone smashes the house up doesn't mean that they're physically violent. A lot of the times that can be a way for someone to get out their frustrations without being physically violent. And it doesn't make it good or okay, but it doesn't always mean that somebody is violent, that them smashing things up and breaking stuff in violence. And I know this because of the yoga teacher that Michelle hired to try and help Nick in his childhood, who actually wrote a book based on their experience with Nick later on, who was interviewed recently about all this. And she spoke about him smashing things up all the time and really being the most troubled child she'd ever seen. So, yeah. Wow, yeah, I'm a little behind in chat. Yeah, the med change is key, absolutely. So then you have that med change and add substance usage. Talk about nightmare, exactly. And I'm sure the med change probably contributed to a relapse. Because you take drugs, recreational drugs, when you're mentally ill or have trauma to self-medicate to try and, in your mind, numb what is bothering you, but in the long term it actually makes it all worse. And that these people don't realize that and can't spot that pattern because their brain's already so disjointed and messed up that they're living from moment to moment. So if something makes them feel good for a moment, they're going to run with it because that's peace to them. A little moment of peace is all they're really looking for because they're in that much turmoil. It's hell. And so many people are so ignorant towards it. And I was for so many years, but just researching it for this case and hearing testimonies about what schizophrenics go through day to day, it really makes you have a lot of sympathy for these people and understanding. But ultimately, Nick had the choice, if he was having these thoughts, to, admit himself to, the hospital and know when this is coming on because he's been dealing with it long enough. But, he made his choice, even though he was, mentally ill. He could have taken steps and recognized that and admitted himself in. But yeah. Hi, Amber. Glad you could join us. So glad you could join us. Yeah, Brian Wilson was a genius, and I did not know that about Pink Floyd. Thanks. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, he was an absolute genius. I think Brian Wilson's melodies were the best melodies, and he inspired generations afterwards. His music is like always, such a big sound, and it always puts you in a happy place. And yeah, he never really thought he was that good, which is sad. Never really believed in his own abilities, and because of how he was treated in his childhood and then his subsequent abuse by his psychiatrist and his development of schizophrenia. So yeah, tortured genius, like many are. Yeah, it's glad to see Amber here. I wonder if someone at the party gave Nick something to help him and it spiraled further. Probably we'll never know that, though. Exactly, Laura Lulu. Hollywood keeps these things hush hush. So I saw Conan was being interviewed recently, but he didn't talk about the whole Reiner situation. That was probably a precondition of the interview because it's an ongoing case, and he was so close to them as well. Probably difficult for him to talk about, but I certainly think that that's a possibility. You hear these Hollywood parties are always full of drugs, so you never know. Whoever did that, I'd be a little worried that a lawsuit could be coming at some point. It'll be a while, but it could happen. Yeah, that's what I was saying. If anyone gave him drugs at the party or that rehab facility, it's certainly going to mean that they're liable in this situation because they didn't go through the whole procedures of a medication change. As this isn't something you can just do at the drop of the hat. There were procedures to follow. And they were negligible and reckless, and they could be held liable for all this very easily. There's other cases where there's precedent for this. He had a history of drug use, pure speculation, but a combo of prescription meds and recreational, a dangerous combo. Exactly, and when a new mixture of his prescription meds as well, he's a ticking time bomb, absolutely. And love Pink Floyd, absolutely. Yeah, another great band. But yeah, I'm glad that everyone could join us and we're going through this. But yeah, I'd love to hear some more of your thoughts in the chat. But I think that this case really shines a light on the complexity of how mental illness is dealt with in the criminal justice system. I think a lot of the time, if it's clear that someone is incompetent, we shouldn't really have to go through the whole rigmarole of proving it, you know what I mean, and wasting time. There should be specific courts for this, where the judges are kind of more familiar with mental health and mental illness, or just be able to expedite it more, where someone can be sent to a mental hospital and they become better funded. I think a lot of the time there's this hesitancy to send people to mental institutes from, who've committed crimes or who are accused of crimes. And I think if you think about it, most people in prison have some kind of mental illness. So how is that going to help them if they've got a disease and illness? So many people who are in there for not even violent crimes, petty theft for drug habits. And then you look into why they have the drug habits, and then you see that there's some kind of underlying childhood trauma or mental illness that they're trying to self-medicate. You know what I mean? Really, is someone just a bad person who likes to, steal and take drugs just for fun, and that there's no real reason why they're living a life like that? I think most people would value a life of security and stability, but most don't have the choice in these situations. That, like I said earlier, people who are self-medicating are living moment to moment with the trauma that they're dealing with within their own minds. And the people who aren't dealing with mental health issues are very negligent and ignorant to what that's actually like. People who have a very peaceful mind and a very normal, structured life and had a pretty decent childhood and aren't dealing with any kind of mental health or substance abuse issues, it's unthinkable to us, really. Obviously, I have had substance abuse issues, but I've never dealt with schizophrenia or any kind of mental illness. So I've dealt with trauma, but that's not really, that's not schizophrenia. It's not psychosis. It's not depression. So it ain't the same. It's hard for me to. I think it's probably hard for all of us to understand what crippling mental illness is like. Hi, Roxanne. Glad you could join us. Yeah, we're 30 minutes in, and I'm doing updates on the Nick Reiner case. And in case you didn't know, AJ Allen Jackson has withdrawn, and there's much speculation as to why that is. And I'm just going through the possible reasons as to why. and I'm glad you could join us. He'll probably be heavily sedated if there's any court hearings he has to attend. I agree. I think that they have him heavily sedated anyway because they know how bad his schizophrenia is. So, if they've got anyone, I think usually the procedure in the prisons or in the jails with people who are that, seriously ill is just so that they're not an issue so it's easier for the corrections staff and the cops there to deal with. They just dope them up as much as they can and keep them as submissive as possible. And that's kind of, not really addressing the problem, but it's making them manageable for the time that they're there. And I understand why, because he's clearly demonstrated what a danger he can be when he's not, controlled. What do you think of the media saying he was smirking, but none of the court drawings showed that? Sorry, my accent came through a bit. My old accent came through a bit there when I said showed. That's quite embarrassing. I taught myself to speak more, proper, refined, and I went drawing showed there. That I went really like northern English for a second, and it got kind of broad, and you could never understand me. But yeah, on that point, Amber, before I taught myself completely off topic, I think it's mainly to do with the media trying to get clickbait headlines, and they're doing it with this case a lot, and not just the media, but like YouTubers are saying all kinds of stuff, like saying Nick was smiling, or saying that, or saying things like he's having a tough time in jail, and people are torturing him, other inmates, when they're not. He's in solitary. He's not associating with other people, and also he's that far gone with mentally ill and also doped up that I don't think he really understands his surroundings. So nobody's torturing him. And these clickbait headlines, which they're just so not helpful, and they're just adding more trauma for the family and who've already been through enough. Like, I think I say to people who are posting these clickbait headlines for views, or media who are running these false stories, like, think of Romy and Jake and think of the rest of the Reiner family. Do they need you to keep making lies out to make things seem even worse and just to add more salacious tittle tattle? They don't need that. Have some respect for them. Like they said in their statement that they released, the joint statement from the Reiners, just like asking them people to have compassion and respect the process, and like that's the least anyone who has any media integrity can do. And obviously, not everybody in the media, mainstream or not, has that type of integrity. And obviously, ATS has been going over that with Lauren Matthias on her channel, and I've noticed she's been getting onto this case as well, and I'm not really happy about that, because she seems to be like a jinx for every bloody case. But yeah, it really is. Sometimes it's hard to function with depression and anxiety or anything. So I can't imagine what it's been like to live with what is going on in Nick's brain. Wow, coffee and skeletons. I'm glad you shared that. I'm glad you felt able to share that, because no one should feel ashamed of having mental illness or going through something, trauma, or just struggles otherwise. As difficult as it is, it's that adversity that creates and builds the character and the flame within us. I think that the universe doesn't give us anything that we can't handle. But in instances like this, it is really hard to understand and get your head around. I think that this never would have happened if his medication hadn't been messed with so much. His mind was so fragile because of years of, recreational drug abuse and schizophrenia, which, like we keep saying, is like a cocktail of disaster. It's like pouring gasoline in an already roaring flame. It's just going to get worse. It's going to get incredibly worse. So, like, it's such a difficult situation, and Yeah, I'm glad you could share that, because there should be no that I think that this case highlights that we don't. The last thing we need is stigma around mental illness and substance abuse issues. If you've got these issues, for God's sake, try and get some help. And like we know, and like I've been over in my past lives about this, it ain't easy, especially ain't you, if you ain't got the money. And even if you've got the money, Nick had millions of dollars behind him and his parents, and even that didn't solve the situation. And what this is exposing is a predatory industry in rehabs, where, you know, if uh, he's paying them so much money, the family, like why are they just messing around with Nick? If the family are paying the rehab 25 to 30 grand a week for Nick, like why are they messing around with his medication? And the question for that the answer to that may be, I've heard TMZ do a special on this. Like, strangely enough, only a couple of weeks before the Reiner murder actually happened, the Reiner's murders actually happened, Harvey Levin was on, and he was talking about rehab and rehab industries, where people sometimes go into these places, and because their parents, or they're paying like 20, 30 grand a week, they're able to bend the rules a little bit. So maybe Nick was in there and was like, oh, I want a little extra. So to kind of cover up them giving him some drugs that maybe he shouldn't have been having, to get him high, maybe, they covered it up by saying that this was a change of medication. But like I said earlier, this is just a theory, but it would explain a lot, and also explain why the proper process of when someone with schizophrenia changes medication wasn't followed. Multiple doctors usually tend to be consulted, and it isn't just some quick thing like what was done. So yeah, I heard speculation. Nick could have been essayed as a child, but I don't know. Yeah, that's speculation based off just reports that Rob used to kiss him on the lips and stuff like that. I mean, like, I don't kiss my dad on the lips. I never have. Me and my dad barely even hug. You know, I'm not a very. We weren't a very physical family in showing. We kind of show affection more with words than like hugging or kissing or anything like that. But some cultures are different, and like, to be honest, like, I don't feel like I saw pictures of it, and it kind of looked a bit, odd. But that's just because my experience is different. I don't think it necessarily means that he was being abused, but obviously, all things are possible. But I personally, I don't see it. I just think that maybe people are different. People have different ways of expressing themselves. I know that Rob and Carl Reiner used to kiss each other on the lips, and I guess that it's just like a family thing, maybe, that like they're big on that affection, and that maybe Rob believed that it was important to show affection to his kids, to show them, and not be like a cold kind of right-wing father. You know what I mean? Like, emotionless, like kind of like how I am. No, yeah, but like, as he was the opposite of Archie Bunker, you know what I mean? And Archie Bunker never would have kissed his kids, you know what I mean? So I guess maybe that's it. But like, like, all opinions are welcome, you know what I mean? And obviously, Amber's saying she just heard speculation. Amber's not saying definitively that happened. But like, I've heard that speculation too, and I personally, I just don't see it. You know what I mean? I need a little more than just like they kissed each other on the lips. You know what I mean? If there was tongue, oh my God, then yes, I would be like, what the fuck? But I still find it a little odd, but I don't feel it's enough for me to go, yes, he was being abused. I need a little bit more than that. But like you said, it's just, speculation. There's so much speculation going around, and I'm glad you could join us, Amber. I know you're busy with the babies and the kids, and got mothering duties, and I'm glad Roxanne and Coffee and Shays and everyone else could join us. Yes, I think I heard that as well. Did anyone watch Being Charlie? Was that featured? No, but a person from the cast of Being Charlie said that like they argued a lot on set, and they argued a lot on set, and but to resolve the argument, Nick and Rob would kiss each other on the lips, and they said that they found that kind of weird. I mean, I would find that kind of weird, but like I said, like that ain't my family. You know what I mean? Like I don't tend to like me and my family like with like relationships, obviously, partners, romantic partners, obviously, yes, but with my family members, it's not even. I don't really hug them either. It's like I said, we're not that type of family. We express ourselves with words. You know what I mean? And but like I said, I keep saying like other families aren't like that. So it's a difficult situation, and it's a lot of stuff's going on. You know, a lot of stuff's been said. I always thought it was important to talk about some of what I deal with because I know other people can't or don't feel like they can talk about what they are going through. That's very strong of you, Coffee and Skeletons. And I'm very proud that you were able to do that because hopefully it does inspire someone who's watching now or who's watching the replay and sees the comment highlighted to speak up about how they feel and like don't suffer in silence. You know, if you're being destroyed by stuff in your head, don't blame yourself because that's what this stuff wants you to do. You know what I mean? It's a brain chemistry thing where your mind's working against you, and there are doctors and they can help you get your mind working for you again. And that's what mental illness is. It's the mind working against you. And like any kind of other illness, like if someone gets a cold, it ain't your fault. If you get cancer, it's not your fault. You know what I mean? It's an illness. You know what I mean? And you don't treat an illness by shaming somebody or just brushing them under the carpet and putting a blanket over their faces and just pretending they're not there. You know, you deal with it by addressing it, but it's a lot more difficult to fix a broken bone than it is with a broken mind. You know, and that's the situation that we find ourselves in, and it's a lot harder to understand a broken mind than it is a broken bone. So yeah, I'm glad you could feel that there and share that though, and feel you were able to do the hanging on me as we speak. Sending my best wishes, and I'm glad you could join us with them, and hopefully they get to sleep nice and easily for you. But yeah, glad you could still join us despite being on mothering duties and everything. I'm very, very grateful to the viewers that I get, and especially tonight. I know this was kind of last minute, and it's I only just did a live the other day. So yeah, it's I'm very, very appreciative that everybody's here, and but yeah, I think there's no way Alan Jackson wanted to leave this case. It's way too high profile for him. You know, I think like with Karen Reid case, it's absolutely way too high profile. I haven't seen it yet. Chase Crafton, I'm curious. Oh, what did Chase Crafton? Right. ATS. I think I heard that as well. Did it? Oh yeah. You haven't seen it. You haven't seen Being Charlie yet. ATS. I think you'd really like it. It's. I'm pretty sure it's either on YouTube for free or was on YouTube for free, or you can buy it for pretty cheap. But I know when I watched it, it was on YouTube for free. So it may have been taken down since. But yeah, it's not directly based on Nick and Rob. So it is a father-son relationship, and the son has got substance abuse issues, but the dad is a politician. Obviously, Reiner, Nick Reiner, not Nick Reiner, Rob Reiner was a political advocate, and influencer, but wasn't. It was free on YouTube. Yeah, it's free on YouTube. But yeah, in the movie, Reiner, it's based on basically the part of Rob Reiner is filled by a guy who is a politician who doesn't understand his son's substance abuse issues, or is trying to, and it's difficult for him to, because he can't really relate. And also it has to deal with the shame that it brings onto him, and how it undermines him in his work and his profession. But then it's also the resentment the son feels to the dad for feeling like what he's going through brings him shame, and feeling like he's dismissed and overlooked. So yeah, it's quite a good film to watch, to kind of gauge the level of their relationship, and what a lot of addict parent relationships can be like. They're pretty complex, but obviously there's another dark turn to it now. Nick does make a cameo in the film, but it is a kind of drop your popcorn and you'll miss it type of thing. He's not in there for an extended period of time. But yeah, it's an interesting insight. And yeah, I'm glad you could share that, Shay's Crafting, and let Amber know about it. But yeah, I'd like to hear, Amber, your thoughts about why maybe AJ had to withdraw from the case. Do you think it was financial, or do you think he was forced to because of some conflict of interest? Or do you think another reason? I'd love to hear it. An alternative theory that I don't think I mentioned to you, that I did talk about earlier, but now you're here, I'll go over it again. I think it's worth it. Hi, Punksy. Glad you could join us. Haven't seen you around in a while. Glad you could join us. But yeah, we're talking about the updates in the Nick Reiner case. You know, Nick Reiner, who sadly murdered his father Rob, and Michelle, his mother, and Alan Jackson was represented him, who used to represent Karen Reed, high-profile attorney, but he basically withdrew from the case, didn't go into any details as to why, but then reiterated that he feels Nick is incompetent to stand. He isn't competent to stand trial, you know, and that remains his view. So yeah, if you're familiar with it, I'd love to hear your views, or if not, I'd love to hear your views anyway from everybody. I honestly don't think mental health professionals know how to treat schizophrenia. The complex workings of the brain are still such a mystery. I agree. I think really that they do experiment on mental health patients like guinea pigs, constantly changing different variations of medication, constantly seeing what will work, doing trial and error. It really is just like dangerous the way they do it. Obviously, the harm reduction is reduced when it's done by medical professionals in a controlled setting, but still, it is playing Russian roulette, and people are over medicated factually in the world, in the West, and medication is handed out way too easily. Obviously, like in this case, where rehabs have the ability to change his medication or give him drugs, you know, there needs to be a lot more red tape. And then, like I said, this should trigger an investigation into these high-end LA-based rehabs that are targeting the children of celebrities and the rich and the powerful, because they know that a lot of them have drug issues and have mental health issues, and they know that the parents are desperate and that they will pay top dollar, and then they create a situation where it's actually counterproductive for any kind of recovery. Because of the level of money, the patient feels entitled and able to make demands that are counterproductive to their recovery, to their progress. And because the facility is getting paid so much, they're willing to do that. And hopefully this case will become a catalyst at exposing that. Because like I said earlier, I don't think this would have happened if his medication hadn't been messed around with, because it seemed like what he was doing, what he was taking, was working. He was manageable. He wasn't highly functioning. He didn't have a job. this and that. You know, he was still lapsing in and out of relapsing and all this stuff, but he was a lot better than how he ended up. So you're right, Laura Lulu. It seems like the aim isn't to treat the schizophrenia, because it doesn't seem like they really can. It's about suppressing the symptoms of it with drugs so that it becomes manageable to a degree. There are people who have schizophrenia. My uncle's got a friend whose mother has schizophrenia, and she became paranoid, had paranoid delusions, and thought her neighbors were trying to kill her, and like barricaded herself in her house, and he had to go around and like convince her that it wasn't the case and that she had nothing to worry about. And then they managed to get her medication changed. But this just goes to show how, dangerous this stuff is. Like, a medication can work for a good length of time, and then all of a sudden something changes and it goes, there's a wrench is a spanner's thrown it hole into a wrench is thrown into the mix, or whatever the fucking expression is. I don't know. Something's, messed up, gone haywire. That's what I meant. But yeah, yes, the feeling of being like in a zombie-like state is the main complaint of people treated for mental illness. Exactly. It's sadly, you either have normal feel, or you're off the medication and you're constantly fighting with these horrific, negative thoughts, hallucinations, delusions, anxiety, paranoia, whatever it is. Your mind can't settle, whatever. And then you take the medication and you don't feel like doing anything, and you live basically as a zombie, like you say, and it's a zombified state, and it's basically like living in purgatory. You're not in heaven and you're not in hell, but off it you're in hell, type of thing. I don't believe in these things. I see them as a concept. I do believe in the afterlife, though. Not to get too spiritual, but I do believe in the afterlife, certainly, and it's something I do strongly believe in. I believe in higher powers, and I don't think that that's necessary for recovery, because I think I don't believe in that. Essentially, you could be an atheist and believe in the power within yourself, your own determination to get off the substances, and to create a better life for yourself and for your family, and that love being the higher power, that love for yourself and your self-improvement and your family and your loved ones be what motivates you and keeps you on the right path. But for me personally, that love created an idea and a sense of something bigger, you know what I mean, that I found within nature. And that's my kind of spiritual belief, a very pagan type beliefs. So yeah, from what I understand, a big problem is people start feeling good and then they go off the meds. Absolutely shades crafty. They're so determined to be like everybody else because they've been not like everybody else for so long that the minute that things seem to be cooling down, they're like, right, I can have a little bit more freedom here. I don't have to constantly take this stuff. I can, give it a chance and see how things go. And then there's a complete downshot in the mental state, and things go complete haywire out of seemingly nowhere. And we're only really just starting to fully, as a society, stop stigmatizing this. I can only imagine what life would have been like for a schizophrenic in 100 years ago, not even 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, like back then, the electric shock convulsion treatment, lobotomy treatment, all that torture, torturing people who were already so tortured. It seems like for them, like schizophrenics, or people with psychosis and crippling mental health, that every waking moment is hell, and that they don't have a moment. Just imagine, Like, this is how I've had it described to me from speaking to people online who've got it, or friends of the family who've had relatives that have dealt with it, or other people that I've known who've struggled with it. It's just telling me that it's like constant hell. Like, there's not a moment's peace in your mind. Like, your mind is torturing you with, like, either throwing up delusions, fears, or past traumas, or just constantly cutting you down. Voices in your head, or ideas in your head, that everyone's out to get you, that you can't trust anyone, that the very people that you love are trying to kill you, or lock you away and have you tortured. Like, how could that's just hell to me. That just sounds unbearable. And the ones that are able to stick it out and make it through and keep going are some of the strongest people. But the people that can't are not weak at all. You know what I mean? I think most people dealing with schizophrenia, not knowing what it was and not being able to get any kind of help, or even having help and then having their medications messed with, I can only imagine how awful that must. They don't even know what's going on. Hi, Punksy. Yeah, glad everyone's welcoming you in. Hi, Ambery. Glad you could stop by, and no worries that you're just catching up. I won't be going on for too much longer, because I may end up just rambling here for the whole night, and I'm sure we've all got things to get up to. But I'm glad you could make it, and any of the stuff that you've missed, I would really appreciate if you could catch up and check it out. But yeah, I'm glad you've gotten a nice welcome from the chat and everything, Ambery. I see you in Perplexed True Crimes chat, and I may be joining Laura from Perplexed True Crime this evening for a panel where she wants to hold a discussion or a debate about Nick Reiner and about how we should, like, either how the criminal justice system or society should treat people who are mentally ill and commit crimes. Are we looking at it the right way, or are we looking at it the wrong way? And it's just a really good concept, and I have to keep praising Laura, because she is really good. She's like a mother figure to me, in terms of true crime. I've watched her channel for a long time, and she's been an inspiration, and I really see her as like a true crime mother of mine almost. She's good at giving advice, and helps promote my channel, and came up on my panel and gave a really great live with me. I think the best live that I've done, and the viewers seem to think so as well, with the views and the support that I got on that. Everyone seems to have enjoyed it. So yeah, great big thanks to Laura for bringing so many new supporters to my channel and giving me so much great content on lives and everything, and inspiring me in true crime, and being like a mother figure in the true crime world. So yeah, was he recently diagnosed with schizophrenia by AJ's team, or was this diagnosis for years? I'm not 100% certain, but with a length of time of when AJ took the case and when he said he was schizophrenic, I'm leaning towards that he'd been diagnosed a while ago and was keeping it quiet from people. But also, I'd heard, like, comes in like TMZ reports from people, like blind items and stuff, and this is what Dana Bowling was talking about on some of her live streams, that they've heard anecdotal stuff from people, that he had been suffering with mental illness for a while. So based on those things, I'm leaning towards that he had been diagnosed quite a while ago, because to get a diagnosis of schizophrenia, it takes time. It's not just a flick of the finger situation. You got to go through quite a process. What I've studied. So yeah, I'm leaning towards that. But that was a good question. It's a very good question, and hopefully we can get more answers, maybe, as to why AJ had to leave, or withdrew, because I really think that he wanted this case, and we can get some more answers as to what direction it's going, and whether Nick will be considered competent or not, and where this will go. I'm not going to keep keep doing lives about it just for the sake of it. I'll only do it when there's something new to really report. I don't want to be like a clickbait channel or a clickbait article and take advantage of a tragedy. I'm not a tragedy pimp. I do this because I cover cases that have an impact on me and that I feel passionate about. Like, I really don't do this for viewers or subscription or for monetization. Of course, it's nice to have you all in chat to share your opinions. That's why I like having you here. I love hearing people's opinions and people's views, and the way they look at things. It means a lot to me, and all your support, it means the world to me, and it's helped get me through a really tough time. Obviously, I mentioned in the live, like, I'm back in the UK I was back in the UK for my grandmother's funeral, which was yesterday, and I'll still be here until I'll be getting a flight back to the States on Monday. So I'll be back in. I'm still in, where I grew up. So the time difference I thought was going to be an issue. It's 1 o'clock in the morning local time now. So yeah, and I'm surprised I still have this level of energy. But thank you for the chat, for just helping me stay so reinvigorated and having such great points of discussion to keep me, so focused on all the things I have to say. And it's been a great discussion. I'm glad you could all join us, and moderators, viewers, you're all great. Thank you so much, Coffee and Skeletons. I was worried that I'd slack and be kind of half asleep and constantly having to be woken up by you guys. But yeah, it seems the Pepsi has helped. But yeah, future lives coming up. Like I said, I may be on Perplexed True Crimes panel tonight or tomorrow. Not sure exactly when, but soon. And obviously, or hopefully, I'll be on Amber's panel over the weekend. So you should definitely check out Amber's live tomorrow, which will be a Gypsy Rose deep dive. I won't be on that one, but I will possibly be on her What's live over the weekend, where we'll be maybe going through the transcript again. So look out for me on that, and on the ATS channel in general. She's our moderator here, and she's a big supporter of me, constantly promoting my channel and helping me and encouraging me and giving me guidance. And I would say she's like a true crime mum as well, but she's not that old. She's not old enough to be my mother. So yeah, I wouldn't insult Amber like that. She's like a true crime sister, I suppose. That's better. Yeah. And I hope more understanding and support comes from this horrible situation. It may only take a slight change in our brains, and our mental state could totally change to the worst. Exactly. None of us really know if we're predisposed to mental illness. It seems like it's a genetic thing. It runs in the family, and there are factors that can bring it up, like drug abuse, like trauma that doesn't get treated right. So a lot of people are walking around in life, like one traumatic instance or one bout of substance abuse away from completely losing their minds, and being consumed by mental illness. And that's a really worrying thought. And like you say, hopefully this raises awareness that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to say, look, it's not going well up there. I need some outside help. I need some input on this. I need someone to ask, to ask me what's going on and try and help me get to the bottom of it myself, because it ain't working on my own. And yeah, I don't think that anyone should feel shame for doing that, because, you don't want to bottle it up and leave it, keep building up and then eventually explode like a powder keg and do something you can't take back. but yeah, thank you so much for everyone that's joined us, and I really appreciate it. Like I said, look out for me on Perplexed True Crime and ATS News. And as for future lives on here with me, I am interested in talking about human trafficking in soccer, which is something that, and sports in general, but mainly soccer because it is the most internationalized sport in the world. And I've been looking at stories where fake agents, basically in Africa, will say to aspiring young soccer players, come and meet me in Ghana or Nigeria, and they're coming from Senegal or Mali or another African nation. And this is where, you come for a trial, and then they go there, and then they're held for ransom, and their families have to pay money. And if they don't pay money, the young boys are killed. And this is a massive thing that's going on, a really big problem in Africa. But not as many people are hearing about it in Europe because it doesn't really happen over there. But other elements of it as well is that sometimes kids can be lured in by fake agents and fake talent scouts and then abused sexually and, other ways as well. So that's a whole thing. So I like to do a live about that because I think it's an underreported topic, and it's in line with my theme of covering subjects that aren't really getting attention that I think need to. And I'm inspired to do that by Alex Erickson, who obviously joined us for our last live about missing Native American women. And she's another big supporter of the channel. So make sure to check out her videos and her live streams as well. But yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. And I'll hopefully see you soon. And in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. But yeah, thank you so much.